What happens when an HOA Karen decides to burn your house to the ground? You don't just fight back. You bring the full weight of the law down on them. And when she walks into my courtroom, she's not ready for what's coming next. This is a story of vengeance and justice. Before all this, I was just Judge Miriam Blackwood, respected, feared by criminals, and living a life most people would envy. But that all changed when I lost Harold, my husband of 28 years, to cancer. The pain was unbearable, the grief, suffocating. Our home in Pinewood Estates, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a mausoleum. Pinewood had changed too. It used to be where blue-collar families lived, where kids played in front yards and neighbors shared a beer on Friday nights. But then the rich came in, building their fancy McMansions, pushing up property taxes, and complaining about anything that wasn't up to standard. Enter Bryn Ashworth Sterling, the queen bee of this suburban gentrification. She rolled into Pinewood like she owned the place, flaunting her silver Tesla and designer athleisure like she was royalty. And her first act? Becoming the HOA president and deciding Pinewood needed a makeover. Translation: if you weren't rich or perfect, you were an inconvenience to her vision. I thought I'd seen it all in court, but nothing prepared me for what would come next. It was a crisp autumn morning when I first met Bryn. I was out in the yard, installing a memorial fence for Harold, something we'd planned together during his last few months. Harold's roses were still blooming, a symbol of his careful touch in the garden. The fence, 6 feet tall, was supposed to be our sanctuary, a private space where I could sit in peace, drinking coffee and remembering him. But then, the sound of expensive boots crunching on the leaves interrupted my thoughts. "You must be the widow," she said, her voice cold and dismissive. I wiped my hands on my jeans and corrected her. "Judge Blackwood." "Right, the judge," she replied, almost as if the title was a disease. "I'm Bryn, HOA president. We have a problem." She pulled out her pink tape measure like it was a weapon. "Your fence," she said, measuring it with dramatic flair, "is 6 feet 2 inches. Our regulations clearly state 6 feet maximum. That's a $500 violation, plus removal costs." I asked to see the regulation. She couldn't provide it. In fact, my fence was exactly 6 feet. I had hired a licensed surveyor to make sure of it. She was targeting me, not for a legitimate complaint, but because she could. "You'll hear from us," she sneered as she walked away. I could feel the gears turning in my head. This wasn't just about a fence, it was personal. And I was about to make her regret crossing me. 2 weeks later, my worst nightmare came true. I'd barely gotten out of bed when I saw the smoke. My house, my sanctuary, was on fire. It started slow at first, but before I knew it, the flames were everywhere, eating up everything I'd built. I could hardly breathe as the acrid smell of smoke filled the air, mixing with the scent of burning wood. Harold's memories, the ones we shared in that house, were turning to ash. I knew this wasn't an accident. My thoughts immediately went to Bryn. Her vendetta had just escalated from petty fines to something far more sinister. But what could I do? The police would investigate, but I knew better. I knew how this worked. It wasn't just about getting revenge. It was about dismantling someone's life. The fire department did their best, but the damage was done. Everything I had left of Harold was gone. And Bryn? She thought this would destroy me, shut me up, make me leave Pinewood. But she didn't know who she was dealing with. This wasn't just about a house. It was about justice, and I would see her pay for this. I'd made a vow in courtrooms before, and I was about to make one now. Bryn Ashworth Sterling had made a dangerous mistake, and I was going to use every tool of the law to bring her down. The fire didn't just burn down my house. It reignited something in me. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I spent the next week combing through every piece of evidence I could find. I wasn't just a judge. I was a master of the legal system, and I'd learned long ago that patience is the sharpest weapon. I started pulling up court records. I remembered the time Sterling Premium Builders, Bryn's husband's company, had appeared in my court years ago. They tried to scam an elderly vet out of $30,000 for some supposed roof repairs. I'd ruled against them hard, referring them for fraud investigation. Bryn hadn't forgotten that, and now, she was using the HOA to target me. Then, it hit me. This wasn't just about the house. This was about her larger plan to manipulate the neighborhood, to use the HOA to push out anyone who didn't fit her vision of suburban perfection. I dug deeper, pulling HOA documents, reviewing fines she'd levied on neighbors, and documenting everything. What I found shocked me. Bryn wasn't just targeting me. She was systematically harassing minorities, elderly residents, and anyone who couldn't afford her expensive tastes. I had a treasure trove of evidence that could ruin her. I didn't just have her on one crime. I had her on dozens, each more damaging than the last. With everything in place, I filed complaints, photographed her fraudulent fines, and set my trap. Bryn had no idea she had just walked into my courtroom, but she would soon. The day she walked into my courtroom, I felt the air shift. She strutted in, confident, as if nothing had changed. But I knew, this time, it was personal. I was no longer just a judge. I was someone with a vendetta. The tables had turned. Bryn Ashworth Sterling, dressed in her usual designer garb, walked into the courtroom with a smirk on her face. The same smirk I'd seen when she thought she could get away with burning my house down. She didn't know what she was about to face. She took her seat, arrogantly, like the courtroom was her domain. But this wasn't her court, and I wasn't about to let her turn it into her personal playground. My hands gripped the gavel, and the weight of it felt like it was meant for more than just passing judgments. It was meant for delivering a reckoning. "Miss Sterling," I said, my voice steady and calm. "You've made a grave mistake." She tried to interrupt, but I could feel the room shift. The spectators, the attorneys, they all knew something was coming. And they were waiting for it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the powerful woman she thought she was, but a scared little girl who had no idea what she was up against. I wasn't just a judge. I was her judge, and she was going down. The courtroom battle was swift. I had everything lined up, every piece of evidence meticulously organized. As I presented each document, each piece of footage, I could see Bryn's confidence start to fade. She stammered, trying to explain away the mountains of evidence I had compiled. But it was too late for her. The moment her defense crumbled, I could see her face fall. She thought she could manipulate the system, but what she hadn't counted on was someone who knew the system better than she ever would. Every fraudulent fine, every document she had falsified, it was all there, staring her in the face. She could no longer lie her way out of this. The witnesses I'd gathered from around the neighborhood spoke out. Families who had been hurt by her schemes, elderly residents who had been forced out, victims of her harassment. As each person spoke, the weight of her crimes became clearer, undeniable. She wasn't just an HOA tyrant. She was a criminal, running a campaign of terror against the vulnerable. When the verdict was finally read, I watched as her face turned pale. The judge looked at her, and without hesitation, delivered the sentence that would change her life forever. She was going down, and there was nothing she could do about it. The case was over, but the scars remained. I had won, but the fight had taken a toll. In the end, justice had been served. Bryn Ashworth Sterling was behind bars, and Pinewood Estates was a little safer. But the real victory was in the community that had come together. The people Bryn had tried to tear apart stood strong, united. Families that had once been divided by her cruelty now shared a common bond, justice. And that was something money couldn't buy. As for me, I learned that the law is more than just a job. It's a responsibility, a powerful tool that can be wielded for good or for evil. And when someone tries to abuse it, they'll find out that the law always wins in the end. So, if you ever find yourself fighting against someone who thinks they can destroy you, remember this. You don't have to fight alone. You have the law on your side. And if you're smart enough, you'll use it to make sure the people who hurt you never hurt anyone else again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you've ever dealt with a Karen of your own. And stay tuned for more stories of justice served.